Welcome to the Corruption Files by Crime in Court with Heather. We're peeling back the layers of lies, cover ups, and abuse of power in the justice system. Buckle up as we expose the truth. Let's begin. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crime in Court with Heather. This is the Corruption Files, and today we're doing a deep dive on the Ellen Greenberg case. But before we get into that, that was a wild case, by the way. It was a lot of rabbit holes and things. So, anywho, um, well, so my biggest announcement is that this is the members voted episode. So if you become a member, you get to help vote for a future episode of the Corruption Files, the topic. Anyways, so on that note, let me just go over a couple perks with you. It's $2.99 a month to become a Justice Insider. You get 24-hour members, 24 hours members first on videos. So all my videos have a certain, schedule time. You get at least 24 to 48 hours earlier than when I have it actually scheduled for the public. So members get to see it first. You also get 5 or more members only posts, which includes a you're going to get a poll weekly on any kind of true crime topic. It could be just general or it could be specific to these cases. If we have a specific case like the Ellen Greenberg case that is very in depth, we might have a lot of different angles that we could talk about on there. So there might be lots of different poll ideas and options for you guys there. So I like to give you guys some polls just to kind of see where you guys are at and where you're feeling for cases. You also get 4 custom emojis, loyalty badges. I can't remember what it was. I think it's 1 month, maybe 3 months, 6 months. I can't remember all of them, but you do get, they have several different loyalty badges laid out. And then you get member shout outs. So new members especially get shout outs if you have anniversaries or things like that. I will also shout those out. Member voted topics. You get to vote. One of those polls that you get during the month is going to be asking you what topic interests you the most or what case. And this particular case is the one that got voted on. So we're here. And then you also get 2 debunked and dissected episodes. These are going to be on the second and the fourth Fridays of every month. They'll become available to members only. And that is a fun little series that I am exploring, which we go down some uh, we go down to debunk different kinds of junk science and things in investigations that really probably shouldn't be done. So we're going to use that debunked and dissected for that purpose. I also have an announcement to make. N- Uh, th- uh, Badge of Dishonor is going to be, this is a brand new series that I'm really excited to share with you guys, a new series called Badge of Dishonor. And I'm going to go over some interrogations, maybe some police stops, interactions with police and civilians, and things where maybe things cross the line. So we're gonna go over things like that, and I think it's going to be a fun series. So stay tuned for that. That is going to be on the Saturdays that Debunked and Dissected is not airing. So the second and third Fridays of the month I'm sorry, the second and fourth Fridays of the month is Debunked and Dissected. That's the members only. And then it's a public episode or series. Badge of Dishonor is going to be public, and that's going to be Saturdays on the alternating weeks. So the first, the third, the fifth, whatever. So that is what you're going to get for Badge of Dishonor. It's going to be, I think, a fun, uh, probably like on the shorter side, 30 to 40 minutes, and we can go over some videos and stuff and talk about it. So That's all I had for announcements. So, definitely, if you're interested, please uh, don't hesitate to sign up as it helps support me and the channel and bringing together a community. I want you guys to have a community here. So, all right. So, we are ready to roll. This is a wild case. Let's switch gears here. So, Ellen Greenberg, I gotta turn my fan off because I'm getting cold. Ellen Greenberg. Um, this is a wild case. Uh, Rabbit holes, things that I had to investigate myself because it just didn't make sense when I was going through the evidence and looking through court documents and things like that. So today I have compiled a presentation for you about the Ellen Greenberg case. We're doing a whole deep dive from beginning to now, what we know now. And I'm sure anyone who follows true crime has probably heard of it. I have heard of it. I just never really looked into it until now. So let's get into it. It's a doozy. All right, so this is Ellen Greenberg, and as you can see by the title or the cover, it says the stabbing of Ellen Greenberg, 20 stab wounds ruled as a self unaliving question mark. So keep that in mind. All right, so introduction. 20 stab wounds, and that somehow equated to a self unaliving ruling that just doesn't add up. So, this episode, we're going to talk about the Ellen Greenberg case, it happened in 2011. So, this is an older case that still keeps coming up in the headlines today for many reasons, and you'll see why. So, Ellen Greenberg, like I said here on the slide, 20 stabs and a suspected cover up. It is most likely a cover up because most people don't take their own lives the way that the state is claiming she took hers. Ellen was a 27-year-old Philadelphia teacher found dead in her apartment, the apartment that her and her fiance lived in. The fiance was the last to see her. They usually are. The red flags changed rulings by the ME, so we'll get into all of that. And then family battles with getting information and also overreach by the medical examiner and police. Not just overreach, but like misconduct at its finest. So, timeline before incident. The fiance, isn't she so cute? I had a kind of a lot of fun going through her photos and finding photos of her because she's so cute, she's so pretty, and she looks so different in a lot of them. Like sometimes she has, um, her eyes are obviously hazel, but sometimes in photos they look brown, and in other times they look blue. So they're like just she's stunning. All I want to say is she's stunning. It has nothing to do with anything, but I did enjoy looking at pictures of her because she's so pretty and she just looks so happy. But this is not a happy story. So in 2007, Ellen and a man named Sam Goldberg were set up on a blind date by a mutual friend. I wonder how that mutual friend feels about it now. So in June 2010, so this is, about 3 years into their relationship, Sam proposes on the beach on a trip to California, which you can see she's ecstatic. She's showing off her ring there. Soon after, they move in together, and then they start planning a wedding for the month of August in 2011. In December of 2010, so we have not been married yet. Sam is just fiance at this point. Um, they're engaged now. This is post engagement, but leading up to their August wedding. In December, the family notices that Ellen's behavior has changed. She was once cheerful, energetic, happy, very lively, happy go lucky. Now she's anxious and stressed out a lot. People expressed, I'm sorry, she expressed wanting to come home. In a text to her parents, she said something of the effect of, "Get me out of here." So Not just, I don't want to live here. It was like a begging, pleading. She sees a psychiatrist and is prescribed Klonopin, Ambien, and benzodiazepine. So obviously, these are things to relax her, ease her angst, her anxiety. The Ambien is to help her sleep because if you have anxiety, it's hard to sleep. So I'm sure that all affects everything and whatever. We can tell at this point she's anxious and she's having sleeping problems. And family have noticed her behavior. Her personality has changed, which, having been in an abusive relationship, my personality has never been the same. Gotta tell you that. It's never been the same. And I don't think it'll ever be. It's like you're a shell of a person that you once were. Even if you overcome and survive and get out of an abusive relationship alive, the scars are forever, and I'll never be the same. I'll just leave it at that. My my own experience with an abusive ex, my ex-husband, um, uh, not a good situation. I was in her shoes where I was anxious, nervous all the time, couldn't sleep, but was tired as hell, and yeah. So, anyways, I can't presume that that is what was going on with her, but we'll get there. All right. So, January 8th, 2011, this is now after the holidays, Ellen, and after the psychiatrist prescribing, or her doctor subscribing some medication. So now Ellen tells her mom in a text, I'm starting the med. I know you don't understand, but I can't keep living with feeling this way. So there's something going on with her in the way that she's feeling, but she can't keep doing it. Yes, that might sound like someone wanting to take their own life, or it could sound like someone trying to get out of a bad situation that they are saying, I'm at a breaking point and I can't do this anymore. So it could be taken either way, right? January 10th, 2011, authorities find alleged computer searches for a quick death, painless suicide, and euthanasia. Shit, I said the word that I'm not supposed to say. Anyways, so that word. And so allegedly, authorities find all these things for taking her own life on her computer. But hold that thought. January 12th, 2011, she sees a psychiatrist. A note from the psychiatrist reads as follows: Wants things in control. My whole life, hard worker, anxious, not sleeping, job sucks. So it is well known to her therapist, to her friends and family close to her, that she did not like her job as a school teacher. From what I know, I had a friend, a best friend back in the day, who also was a school teacher for Chicago Public Schools. And she always said that there was so much bureaucracy that it's like you're spending more time politicking than you are really helping or doing anything positive for the kids. So I know she wanted to get out for sure. So after a few years. So this is not unheard of, that maybe she gets into teaching and she's like, you know what, this is not what I thought. I don't really get to do what I want to help the kids. I'm very limited, so maybe this is not the environment that I need to be in. Maybe there's a better place for me to help children. That might have been her thoughts. I have no idea. I'm just speculating, but any number of reasons could come about there. Whoops, I didn't mean to go forward. January 10th, so 2 days later, after she says she's going to start taking these pills, authorities find alleged computer. Oh, I said that already, though. Next one. Um, we're done with that. I don't know why I thought we were still on that slide. My brain does not work sometimes. Sorry about that. Okay, January 16th. So the 12th, she goes and sees the psychiatrist. Now we're on the 16th. She makes her last journal entry about her medication usage. So she was keeping track of her meds in a journal. January 17th, she sees a psychiatrist again. And these are the notes from the psychiatrist. And these are important. This is January 17th. She wants to quit, presumably her job, but mom and fiance don't want her to. She can get out of contract with 2 weeks' notice when she starts to work on something. She starts thinking about everything else. Before we go on to that next one that I'm sure you have noticed already, um, what does that mean to me? I think she starts thinking about everything else. I think that means something from her past that maybe they've talked about that we're not privy to, obviously, and nor should we be. But I think it might even refer to something in regards to past trauma or past things that went on in her relationship with her boyfriend or fiance. I don't know. Again, I'm speculating, but what does that mean? The way that it's written starts thinking about everything else. To me, that means there's something else to think about, or an everything else. Um, and then the last bullet point in her notes from January 17th, the doctor's notes, is not with the ideations of taking her own life, right? So that is a big deal. Remember that. January 17th. January 19th, she sees a psychiatrist again. The notes from that visit say, way better, feels 75% better, agrees she should just get through till June. So she decides, okay, I'm just going to stick it out till June. It's January, got a couple months, you can do it. She tends to walk about compulsively neatening up. I don't know if that is a word, technically, neatening, but that is what uh, it might be. I don't know, but this therapist wrote that down in her notes that apparently she likes to straighten up as like her anxious habits or whatever. And then January 22nd, 2011, she went dress shopping. Remember, she's planning a wedding for August of that year. She went dress shopping with a bridesmaid. Out of nowhere, seemingly, she began crying, and friend didn't know why. But the friend says that she said, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not myself, but I'll get it together. So what does that mean? She's emotionally wrecked at this point. She can't even contain her emotions anymore. That's how bad it is, whatever it is, right? She's in the mindset now where something little that this friend didn't even notice or know or have information about something triggered her into crying and making her so upset and then saying, I'm sorry, I'll pull it together. So she's having an emotional we see where her emotional state is at this time, I should say. So January 22nd, even though she said to her therapist she felt better, she's still not quite better, we can see. So the timeline of the day of the incident, keep doing that, sorry. The timeline of the day of the incident, we're going to go over. And remember that January 17th date? Well, look at this. So January 26th is the day that Ellen Greenberg loses her life in 2011. So very shortly after she tells her doctor she is not having those ideas, right? So January 26th, the incident, part one. We get a lot of parts, and there's court docs with this, so bear with me. I know this, did I tell you up front this might be a long one? We have a lot to go through. Okay, so 1:15, she leaves work. There is a severe weather warning. There's snow. Everybody is let out early at her school. The kids are let out early due to severe weather conditions. She leaves at 1:15. On the way home, she stops for gas. Not something that someone who wants to take their own life would normally do. So that's at 1:26. Around 2:30 p.m., she is entering students' grades remotely from her apartment. She's on her laptop from inside her apartment doing grading with her kids, her students. At 3:47, she sends her final text. We don't have context of who or what this text was about or who it was to, but we just know that that is the last official text that she sends. At this point in time, it is her and Sam in the apartment. Sam then leaves the apartment at 4:45. He goes to the gym in the couple's building. So there is, as an amenity, there is a gym that residents that live there can use. He goes and uses that gym. There's video surveillance footage of him using the gym. At 5:30 p.m., Sam exits the gym. He returns to find the interior door latch engaged, so one of those like crossbar latches he says was engaged. He repeatedly calls and texts Ellen. They're aggressive. They're not. It is a very windy day, and I keep hearing things like the house is going to fall apart. So sorry if I get scared and look around. So he, um, where was I? Oh, he's texting her. He's saying, what the hell? Why is the door locked? And, they progressively get aggressive. I mean, they kind of start out aggressive already. So that kind of gives us a key as to the mind or personality of Sam Goldberg. Very accusatory and like, what the hell? Open the door type of thing, like incessantly putting her down and saying something at the end. He's like, well, you don't even know, or you have no idea. Like, what does that mean? What, she has no idea what you're going to do to him or what you're going to do to her if she doesn't open the door? It's like a threat. It like his texts are very threatening when he does send them, trying to get into the apartment. If it was just something very benign, that she maybe locked or latched the door, not thinking like, oh, Sam's coming back. Maybe she did it out of habit. If she left to go, maybe throw something out or whatever. And then she comes back, she latches it out of habit, and then maybe she falls asleep. Not unheard of, right? So kind of thinking maybe, okay, that might happen. Um, so he repeatedly calls her, texts her. He also starts banging on the door very loudly, where all neighbors around there heard him, and he's yelling her name loudly. He's doing this for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd stay there for 40 minutes screaming and yelling. At 6 p.m. in the evening, Sam goes to the lobby, asks the doorman. So now he's coming. He finally left after 40 minutes of standing there screaming for Ellen to open the door. He asks the lobby man, the doorman, Phil Hanton, to help him break the latch. The doorman, as a good man that he is, says no, because that's a policy violation. I'm not going to help you break into someone's apartment because that is breaking and entering. At 6:14 p.m., Sam calls his cousin Kamian Schwartzman, who is an attorney. 6:14. 6:23 p.m., he's captured on surveillance entering the elevator to go back up to the sixth floors, and that is what you're seeing here on the screen. So there's a woman coming out in a jacket. It looks like a cream color jacket, and then Sam is in a green shirt and some tan colored, it looks like, shorts. So that's him going back up to the elevators to get to the sixth floor. At 6:26 p.m., he receives a call from his high-powered and well-connected uncle, James Schwartzman, who instructs him to call 911. At 6:30, in Hanton's presence, mhm, Sam forces his way into the apartment upon his uncle's advice. His uncle, who's a lawyer, advises him to break and enter in an apartment. Um, and then he breaks into the apartment before police ever arrive on scene. So who's the first to be on the scene? Sam. This is an actual police photo of their apartment. I believe that is the door to where they come in, and she would have been found in the uh, kitchen area in between the cabinets, kind of sort of propped up, but mostly laying down. Or maybe that's actually in question because in some instances he says that Sam has said that she's laying down. In other instances, he says she was sitting up. So I will never know. 6:30 p.m. First responders finally arrive on the scene. At 6:42 p.m., she is pronounced dead. At 7:30 p.m., Camion and James Schwartzman arrive on the scene. So that is the high-powered attorney uncle and the attorney and cousin that he also called. So both of them show up. Why? Why does he need counsel so quickly? Timeline post incident. That's an actual knife that was found in the chest of Ellen Greenberg when her body was found. It's a serrated blade that came off of a butcher block that the couple had in their kitchen. And the butcher block was actually turned over, and some other knives were out on the counter. Dr. Marlon Osborne performed the autopsy on Ellen. He says there were multiple stab wounds to the chest, abdomen, and neck. The fatal injuries were to the the aortic arch, the left lung, and the cervical spine. So those were the fatal blows. He also states that there is bruising at various stages of healing. Well, what do you know? They couldn't all be from that moment, meaning she had bruises from previous interactions with someone or something that bruised her body. That is what that says to me. I think he was beating her. I think she was out of her mind, anxious and wanting to get out of it, but didn't know how, and was afraid. And I think and it says in the psychiatrist's notes that her mom and Sam didn't want her to quit teaching. So I kind of think that maybe her mother might be a little, and I don't know anything about her mother, and I'm not saying anything bad about her. This is not a critique, like not in a bad way. I'm just saying that maybe the mother also had some controlling tendencies or ways of controlling the daughter, even if she didn't mean to. It might have been, suggestions that she did subconsciously. I don't know. Excuse me. But anyways, so these bruises, I think, were potentially on her from prior incidents, and I think maybe she was afraid to bring it up to her mom because maybe her mom was in some ways controlling too. And if you know anything about psychology, people who grow up in a controlling household or with a controlling parent or sibling or whatever tend to gravitate, and it's not on their fault, but somehow they tend to gravitate towards controlling, manipulative partners later in life because that's what they know. I am not accusing her parents at all of anything, but it's just something that I know in my own personal head because of the things I've had to endure and struggle and get through with my own situations. So I'm just saying what I know. So this is not a dig at anybody. Don't think so. And if you thought so, I apologize. All right. So, the bruising at various stages. That I am gonna say that's suspicious. Your bruises don't heal at various stages after you die, if they're all inflicted at the same time. The property manager, this is a huge hiccup in this case. Huge. The property manager, upon instruction from the police, just, out of the blue, was like, oh, I'm going to call the police and say, hey, can I clean up that unit? And the police were like, yeah, sure, that's fine. There's no worries here. Well, guess what? They had some professional company come out that does, professional crime scene cleaning company. They had this company come out, clean the crime scene, and then the investigators show up and are like, we were supposed to investigate this scene. We never fully did." Huh? You're supposed to like tape off your areas of crime, and was that not done? Was she just dragged out of there and then nobody looked at the house? Nobody taped off or cordoned the crime scene and secured it until a proper and thorough investigation was done? Why was it cleaned the next day with permission by police? Hmm? I have questions. Do you see why there were so many rabbit holes in this case? It's like, well, now I could go down the hole. Who was the property manager? And why were they doing this? So, yeah, I didn't do that on this case, but there are a lot of rabbit holes in this. You see how things just don't make sense? When things just don't make sense that from the state's narrative, then you know that they're lying to you. Absolutely without a doubt, lying. All right, next. Sam's uncle also came in the next day to the apartment without a secured crime scene and went into the apartment and removed Ellen's two laptops. She had a work laptop and a personal laptop. He also took her cell phone. He took her engagement ring. If that doesn't say something to you, he took her engagement ring and credit cards. Or this is also known as evidence tampering, but by a high-powered criminal attorney, Mr. James Schwartzman. This is evidence tampering, but there was no accountability for this. So, anywho, Sam's uncle just gets access into the apartment somehow and comes on in and helps himself to Ellen's electronics and other things. On January 29th, so 3 days later, police make a statement saying, we're leaning towards self unaliving. And there's no maniac on the loose. Don't you guys worry. Excuse me, sir, what? That's like in the Idaho 4 case. You don't have anyone in custody, but yet you're telling me there's no one on the loose. Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't born yesterday, but sure. What? Okay, moving on. March through April, somewhere in between there, of 2011, there is a secret meeting that takes place between the Philadelphia Police Department, Philadelphia or whatever county DA, the DA here, and the medical examiner for this county. All meet. They have a secret meeting. Somehow, the official original ruling, which was homicide on the death certificate, is suddenly changed. The manner of death is now suddenly changed in March, on March 7th, 2011 to be exact. Why? We don't know. But there were secret meetings taking place between these individuals, the Philadelphia Police Department, the DA, and the ME, the medical examiner. Why? What were you guys doing? And that should be right there a huge red flag that they need to be investigated. But again, I'm sure no accountability has taken place. All right, let's move on to the next bullet point, which is 2012, Dr. Cyril Wecht. If you watched with me the Menendez brothers' first trial, we streamed through the first trial. Dr. Cyril Wecht was he was an expert, a very, very good expert witness for the defense on forensic pathology, I think it was. I think he's a forensic pathologist or something along those lines. But he was excellent in explaining how, some of the abuse could have affected the brothers, the Menendez brothers. So if you recognize that name, that is where he's from, Dr. Cyril Wecht. At least I believe it is. I didn't double check, but I'm pretty sure there's not too many Dr. Cyril Wechts who are experts who testify in trials all the time. So in 2012, Cyril Wecht was hired by the family as an independent expert to look at this case. So he does an analysis, which we're going to read through his findings. April 4th, 2017, Detective Scott Eelman writes in a report where he concludes that blood evidence is inconsistent with the final position. Evidence of the body that the, I'm sorry, this is evidence that the body may have been moved. So you can see there is a picture of, I'm assuming this is a cabinet because she was leaned up against the cabinets, but some of the blood evidence that the detective Eelman looked at, he concluded that she might have been standing for some of these wounds and sitting for some, and we'll get into his analysis as well, or at least his findings. And then, yeah, so multiple signs of evidence that the body had been staged or moved there. Dr. Cyril Wecht's report, we're going to read straight from it. It's a mediological question. What was the most likely manner of death? Self-unaliving stab wounds can rarely be multiple, yet this case has 20. Self-unalivings by stabbing are becoming less frequent, with simpler choices being drugs, hanging, or gunshot. So there's many other ways that you could do it, which is easier. Stabbing yourself is not one. Cutting the wrist and the throat is often associated with self-unaliving, whereas stab wounds to the back are unlikely to be self-unaliving. So remember, she's got 10 stab wounds to the back of her head, and you're going to see exactly in a minute. Sorry, my throat is very itchy today. I don't know why. And I had to cough really bad. So self-unalivings are usually a different way, rarely to the back. A murder usually involves multiple stab wounds to the side, back, or stomach. In a self-unaliving, there may be additional cuts across the wrist or tentative stabbings to see if it will hurt or to work up the courage. So you try it a little bit first and then you decide if you really want to in those situations. Ah, I keep, sorry, I keep hitting the little scrolly button, on top of my mouse and it keeps changing. I don't mean to. It's so sensitive. Sorry. So the last line there that I missed, then will usually only be one wound and most likely in the chest. So if you are someone who's going to self-unalive yourself with a knife wound, a stabbing, you're going to do it straight to the chest as fast as you can, as hard as you can, because you're not going to want to miss, right? It's going to be painful and unfun. Dr. Cyril Wecht's report continued. The multiple stab wounds to the back of the upper neck and lower head found at autopsy were unlikely self-unaliving stab wounds, especially the different directions that K, L, Q, R, and S, with vertical direction left to right, straight vertical of M, N, and T, and right to left. Okay, we don't need to read all that. But there we'll see a chart of what her stab wounds look like, or a graph, not a graph, a chart, an image. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry. Okay, the location of the stab wounds high up on the back of the neck and upper back of head are also unlikely to be self-inflicted wounds. A self-unaliving wound or self-unaliving victim will frequently leave a note. There was no note. There was also no indication that the decedent was having these ideations from the standpoint of her own family, friends, personal associates, and the psychiatrist who had evaluated her. And he leaves out the fact that it was just 10, 11 days prior, or no, I'm sorry, 9 days prior. I can't do math. 9 days prior that the psychiatrist wrote in her notes, not someone to have those ideas, right? There had not been any indication that she had the intention to commit a self-unaliving or was depressed during the day she was found dead. She seemed her usual self in the morning when she had a telephone conversation with her mother and later at midday during her texting with a friend at approximately noon. It would be important to find out from the fiance how she behaved barely half an hour before when she left the apartment, as he claimed. So, yeah, continuing on. A self-unaliving victim will rarely stab herself through her clothing. So that's another thing. People don't, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna like lower your shirt or lift your shirt up so you don't get blood on it, even though you're gonna get blood all over anyway, so what does it matter? But that is what a natural instinct would be. You would remove or shift your clothing out of the way. Instead, she will open her shirt to expose the skin. Stabbing through clothing may indicate a homicide. It is not known if fingerprints on the knife were taken and examined. We still don't know. So it is Dr. Cyril Wack's opinion. Following the review of all submitted documents, the results of the autopsy, and the accounts from the investigation, based upon reasonable degree of medical certainty, is it is my professional opinion that the manner of death of Ellen Greenberg is strongly suspicious of homicide. So there's one expert that says it's homicide. Now we have Detective Scott Eelman's report. It is my opinion that Ms. Greenberg was not in the position in which she was found at the time, meaning she didn't move herself, so somebody else did. So that she was not found at the time that the blood was deposited on her sweatpants, sweatshirt, and shoes. So the blood on her shoes or her clothing was different than where she was found. It is also my opinion that Ms. Greenberg's head had been in several positions during the time of blood flow, and it remained so for enough time as to have the blood flow across her face and back towards her ear. So she was probably thrashing around with him as he was doing this, or whoever allegedly did this. I roll my eyes because I have to say allegedly because I don't want to get sued. But um, yeah, I got nothing, so it doesn't matter. But um, allegedly, Sam was stabbing her, or someone, the perpetrator, was stabbing her, and she may have been thrashing around, which would equate for why the blood was moving around on her face. It is my opinion that the bloodstain evidence in this case is inconsistent with position in which Ms. Greenberg was found. Furthermore, I have serious concerns regarding the patterned bloodstain to the left of Ms. Greenberg's left leg. The minimal amount of bloodstains on the floor in comparison with those found on the clothing of Ms. Greenberg and the flow patterns of the bloodstains on Ms. Greenberg's face relative to the position in which she was found. So he talks about he kind of breaks the case on she was not in the position that they found her in when she got those wounds. So what was going on? I think thrashing and him being very violent with her. So August 2017. So now we're moving away from the time of the crime. We're in 2017, 6 years later. Dr. Wayne Ross determines homicide in an independent review. So we have another expert that calls it a homicide. So that's two. We're going to read some of his report too. In 2018, doctor, I was going to call him doctor, DA, the district attorney, who is the current governor now, Josh Shapiro, but then he was the district attorney for that county in Philly. He had referred the case finally to the AG because he finally recused himself due to that conflict of interest that he had with Sam's family, James Schwartzman, the attorney. So after a lot of public push, I think, and pressure from the family, he recused himself and gave it to the Attorney General. January 28th, 2018, Dr. Henry Lee, he is a world-renowned blood, uh, what's it called? Blood spatter expert. He testified in the appeal for not Scott Peterson, the other Peterson, Michael Peterson in this from the staircase. Dr. Henry Lee helped in that appeal and basically totally trashed the expert that was for the state who was doing like these total junk science experiments to get these wild results. And yeah, so Dr. Henry Lee totally put that dude in his place. But so that's Dr. Henry Lee is hired by the family. He reports, or his report claims the number and type of wounds and the bloodstain patterns are all consistent with a homicide, nothing to do with uh, self-unaliving. It's comical that the the facts of the case basically are incongruent with what the state is telling us, right? So the facts of the case are incongruent, they don't make sense, they're inconsistent. Anyone with a brain can realize that 20 stabs to yourself is not going to be a self-unaliving. But here we are. And this a-hole, Josh Shapiro, has been holding it up for years, this conviction, or not a conviction, but this determination that she's that this was self-unaliving. So he doesn't have to go after anybody to prosecute. So Josh Shapiro refers the case finally to the AG. After the 7 years, Dr. Henry Lee comes in 2018 and also says, dude is inconsistent, or I'm sorry, the wounds, everything in this is inconsistent with a homicide. So we're all supposed to just believe the state and the DA blindly, even though our own eyes and common sense tells us that they're wrong. The state is wrong in this case, and whatever they did it for probably nefarious reasons. So, anyways, I'll get off my high horse on that. In October 2019, the family files a civil suit for the city of the city of Philadelphia, the medical examiner's office, and they are seeking to reverse the ruling, to reverse that determination of how she died. So this is Dr. Wayne Ross's report. He says, after review of the above information, I can offer the following opinions to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. There was evidence of a stab wound which penetrated the cranial cavity and severed the cranial nerves and brain. As a result, she would have experienced severe pain, cranial nerve dysfunction, and traumatic brain signs and symptoms, including numbness, tingling, irregular heartbeat, and bradycardia, which isn't that the same as irregular heartbeat? I don't know. Respiratory depression, meaning she would have trouble breathing, neurogenetic, neurogenic shock, and impaired loss of consciousness. So there is a very large excise wound to the back of her head that is not a stab wound, but I don't think it even gets addressed in the autopsy, really. And we're just supposed to think that it was not maybe a fatal blow or potentially a fatal blow, or maybe it was an accident and then it was too late and he had to go the rest of the way because otherwise, you just injured her and she's gonna everything was gonna fall apart and it was in the heat of the moment. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Again, all of this is my speculation, just an opinion. So the evidence of all of that. There's evidence of strangulation. So there is evidence, according to Dr. Wayne Ross, of strangulation. There was a mark over the front of the neck which was consistent with a fingernail mark. There were multiple bruises under the neck and in the strap muscle over the right side of the neck. The patterns were compatible with a manual strangulation. There were multiple bruises over the body, some of which were fresh, many of which were older. My friends, she was in an abusive relationship, allegedly. He was beating her. He was absolutely beating her. And she was terrified and couldn't do anything about it, or thought she couldn't. I think maybe he threatened her and said he'd kill her family if, they always do that. There's abusers always threaten the thing you love. So her family members, her pets, whatever. If you leave me, I will kill that thing that you love. That's what abusers do. So maybe she didn't think that she could tell anybody. Maybe she wasn't at that point yet. And the fact that she was starting to see a psychiatrist, maybe she wasn't comfortable with that psychiatrist yet by opening up fully about the situation. So I really do think that she was seeking help for what was going on, because what was going on was he was hurting her and trying to control her and telling her this is how life's going to be now. The patterns of the bruises were consistent with a beating, repeated beating. The scene findings were indicative of a homicide. If police were at all honest in this investigation, they would have found that and immediately questioned Sam, the fiance, and probably put cuffs on him. But not in this case. Not in this case. Next is Dr. Henry Lee's report. After review of the reports and the photographs, the kitchen area where the decedent was found is consistent with the primary indoor scene. Assuming that all of the blood noted was the decedent's blood, the bloodstain patterns indicate that she was in a standing position when she received her initial injuries, which caused the blood dripping on the kitchen sink, counter, and cabinets, and drops on the floor. So there was blood on the kitchen sink, the counter area, the cabinets where she was propped up on, and drops on the floor. Subsequently, she was on the floor with her head leaning forward, producing all of the blood drops that fell onto her pants and between her legs. Two separate contact stains were found on the cabinet near her. One stain was consistent with a wipe from right to left. The second was inconsistent with a hair swipe, indicating that her hair with the blood from her injuries came into contact with the cabinet in a downward direction. The stab wounds noted in the photographs are consistent with being caused with a knife, but there is no indication of the length of the or the width of the knife except for the wound in which the knife was embedded to the handle. Ooh, it was embedded all the way to the handle. The decedent received additional wounds to her neck, her head, and those were not clear in the scene photographs. Therefore, it is not possible to make additional observations of those patterns at this time. The number and type of wounds and bloodstain patterns observed are consistent with a homicide scene. Where are we at? 3, 4 experts that have said that now? I forgot. Well, we have one more now. Thomas Brennan in 2019 submits an equivocal death analysis. So Thomas Brennan is a consultant and former uh, Philadelphia State Trooper. I'm sorry, Pennsylvania State Trooper. I keep saying Philadelphia, don't I? It's Pennsylvania. I'm a moron. I say the wrong thing. Guys, when you get past 40 and you have autoimmune diseases and medications that you take for those autoimmune diseases, your brain does not work anymore. Not like it used to. I used to be so smart and sharp, and now I just sound dumb all the time. Pennsylvania State Trooper, former. 2019 equivocal death analysis. He states in his report, well, actually, his report highlights, first of all, his report highlights that there's a fraudulent spinal cord exam statement that was added to the autopsy report to support their homicide, or I'm sorry, their self-unaliving ruling. So they put a fraudulent or made up some statement and put it in their report to make it support the state's theory of a self-unaliving. The pathologist was quoted as not recalling examining the spinal cord specimen. There are also invoices that are post-dated, post-completion. So after the date of autopsy and all that, there's still invoices being going back and forth as this is happening. So maybe the pathologist was still working for the law enforcement there. So no original report was found. Suggests post ad hoc fabrication to justify a changed manner of death. So again, there's no. You're supposed to save your paperwork, right? You're supposed to report, report, report. Write it all down, even if you think it's too much. Write it down, because if you don't memorialize it, it didn't happen. And in this case, they didn't memorialize it. They did not memorialize this whole spinal cord issue when it happened. Basically, the pathologist, so I'll explain, the pathologist testified that there was no incision or that there no none of the stab wounds harmed or interfered with the spinal column, meaning she could have been alive to do every single one of those stabbings, right? So there was nothing that was incapacitating her. And this piece of spinal column where that is in question, this pathologist was saying there was no damage to it, and she could have continued to be upright and stabbing herself through all of these stab wounds. Well, that's not actually the case, but we'll find that out in a little bit. But this whole thing is damning to the pathologist, the person, the ME, who did who did the autopsy, and also for law enforcement because it seems like they're colluding with the medical examiner to make certain convictions stick when they don't have the right evidence, right? That's what it appears like to me. So this undermines the pathologist's credibility and it points to a potential cover up because law enforcement may also have been telling the pathologist what to put. And then we have in 2021, so I'm sorry, but this is a long timeline as the title states, justice takes time. So now we're in 2021, 10 years later, after her homicide, and I'm calling it a homicide because it was definitely not her by her own hands. So remember Philip Hanton, the doorman or the lobby man, he signs a declaration 10 years after the crime. We're going to read it. But first, Thomas Brennan's 2019 equivocal death report. According to witnesses, the property manager and security man, police looked around the apartment without any medical information, determined that the death was a self-unaliving, and then abandoned the crime scene. Remember how it wasn't secured and they were able to go in and clean the next day? That's because they were just like, okay. They didn't even look around. They're just like, oh, she did it herself. Okay, bye. What? How how do I have that kind of power that someone could just cover up a crime like that for me? Not that I would do that, but like that's a lot of power, man, that you can just have someone cover up crime that quickly with law enforcement. The property manager and security man had to remain with the victim for several hours until the medical examiner personnel could remove the victim. The following day, an autopsy was performed by Dr. Marlon Osborne, January 27th, without police presence. So police were not there, which would explain the homicide ruling at first. The 10 stab wounds to the back of the neck and of the victim and a 6.5 centimeter wound to the side of the scalp. That's that's big. um, to the side of his scalp, and multiple bruises in various stages of healing were discovered. According to the ME personnel, they notified the lead detective of the autopsy findings and informed the police the findings of the autopsy were the death of the victim was the result of a homicide. So originally, law enforcement should have been treating this as a homicide. Since the police had abandoned the scene, they now are forced to prepare affidavits of probable cause to obtain a search warrant to re enter the apartment. Whoopsies. Prior to the police returning to the apartment, the prominent attorney uncle of the fiancé entered the apartment and removed the victim's work laptop, personal laptop, cell phone, engagement ring, and credit cards. Police did not retrieve the items from the attorney uncle until January 29th. The fiance's family and the attorney uncle had an opportunity but did not return the items to the victim's family on January 28th when they attended the victim's funeral in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I said it right, right? I said Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I kept saying Philly. All right, so police didn't even retrieve the items. And yeah, like what are you doing, cops? That'd be the first thing you do is check her electronics, but they chose not to do that. Fraudulent statements regarding the findings of an examination of the wound to the victim's spinal cord was placed in the ME's autopsy report at a later date, in order to justify the findings of the self-unaliving. I almost said it. The neurological forensic pathologist who was quoted in the report does not recall the case. Oh, imagine that. I just forgot the case all of a sudden. Does not recall the case and stated if she did examine the specimen, she would have submitted her findings if she examined this piece of spinal column that definitely did have some injury to it. She said that she would have submitted her findings on an invoice with charges of her work. To date, this alleged report has not been found. Invoices with documented findings of the doctor's work do exist prior to January 27th and after January 27th. According to this report, this is a statement from Dr. Osborne in an interview with with this family consultant, this Thomas Brennan, who is writing this report. This is what Dr. Osborne said. So after responding to so basically, let me give you a little background information here. There's a little back and forth. So they're trying to get the ME for a deposition or just an interview, right? We don't even have to subpoena you if we could just ask you some questions, but they're not really cooperative. So they go through the the chief examiner, sorry, the medical examiner. So this guy, Dr. Osborne, is the assistant medical examiner. So they go through the chief medical examiner to try to get an interview with Dr. Osborne. At first he says, yeah, okay. Then he says, yeah, no, I don't want you to. And then he's like, okay, well, we'll only do it on a Zoom and we want everybody there and you're not going to have like personal one-on-one with this person. So whatever. It was weird. And it was a lot of back and forth. Finally, they get to sit down with the coroner, and other people are there asking questions as well. Finally, when Thomas Brennan gets to ask a question, he says, so after responding to Dr. Ross and the consultant's question, Dr. Osborne was finally asked why the consultant, or finally asked by the consultant, why he changed the cause and manner of death from homicide to self-unaliving. Dr. Osborne responded, he made the change, quote, at the insistence of the police because the police said there was lack of defense wounds. Uh, huh? So the police pressured you into changing your original official ruling. Is that not tampering with evidence or some kind of serious crime, I'm sure? I don't think that's legal, but let's move on. So, in another interview later, this is the or this is the chief medical examiner. So Dr. Gulino is the chief medical examiner. Dr. Gulino stated, sorry, let me back up here. The consultant asked Dr. Galino why the cause and manner of death was changed. Dr. Galino stated, you don't understand. The police said there was no one else with her in the apartment. I had to do something. Again, what? So you and Dr. Osborne were like, yeah, let's make it a self-unaliving, even though all of the evidence points to homicide, but let's give in to the cops because they're pressuring us. And they were just both like, yeah, okay. No, they had, okay, I don't know, but they're probably all getting something out of this deal. There's some kind of quid pro quo, I would think. I don't know, but I'm speculating again. So the consultant learned the specimen of the victim's spinal cord was preserved in the ME's laboratory. Permission to examine the specimen was obtained. Dr. Wayne Ross, a neurological forensic pathologist, court qualified as an expert in the examination of stab wounds, and several other forensic experts examined the specimen. So that piece of spinal column was saved, in the one that's in question, and Dr. Ross and others have examined it. The findings were the severity of the wound to the spinal cord was such that it would have totally incapacitated the victim and caused death, meaning she couldn't have kept stabbing herself and ended up with a knife to the chest, especially as forcefully dug in as it was after all that blood loss and everything. She would have been incapacitated. This would have prevented the victim from administering any further stab wounds to herself. Dr. Ross's findings were death was a result of homicide. During the course of the review, an assistant district attorney who was in the DA's office prior to Mr. Kasner assuming the position, was contacted by the consultant and asked to review the case file. The ADA stated he located the file in a closet from the location of all homicide files. So, whatever closet that all the homicide files are in, it was in the closet. Okay, that's a start. The case file was covered, but remember, it was in a closet away from the location. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that totally wrong. Let me read that again. The ADA stated he located the file in a closet away from the location of all homicide files. So the homicide files are over here, and this file just happens to be somewhat hidden away in a closet. Okay, the case file was covered with Christmas decorations and did not have a homicide number assigned to it. These are not all coincidences, people. And if you believe in coincidences, that all three of those things could happen and it's just sheer luck, then the tooth fairy's real and so is Santa Claus. Because there's no way all those things could be. So it's in a closet. It's uh, from all is it locked away from all the other homicide files. It's covered in Christmas decorations, and it doesn't have a number assigned to it. That's four separate things done to it that make it stand out from all the other homicide files. Not no coincidences here. The ADA said that oh no, I guess that was the end of what I wanted to read to you. I didn't need to read that last sentence. The consultant learned the specimen of the victim's spinal cord was preserved. Nope, that's an error. I didn't mean to do that. That's doubly on there. Whoops. Here I go. I'm a dummy. Okay, here we go. So the ADA said that I was supposed to finish that sentence, but I did it wrong. I screwed up and doubly put those in. Those other two were meant to be erased, and I separated it so I could read it all in one. Okay, so I have to find where I lost, or where I left off. So the ADA said that the file was in a total disarray, and it took several days just to organize it. He went on to say one of the first things he noticed was the report regarding the spinal cord examination was not in the file. Yet another coincidence? That's five now. He went on to say that it was not in the file. Okay. He went on to say that he contacted the ME's office to obtain a copy of the report, and the ME's office told him that the report did not exist. Another coincidence? Six. The ADA agreed with the consultants following his review that a basic death investigation was never performed by the police. The ADA is anxious to view the condition of the file and review its contents once it is obtained from the AG's office. So this is obviously a different AG, not Josh Shapiro, not friends with family friend James, family uncle James Schwartzman. So, um, wait a minute, did I read that already? Yes. Okay. The AG's office had, I thought I hit the button and it didn't forward. The AG's office had the case for approximately 14 months. Witnesses interviewed by AG investigators remarked that the investigators were totally unprofessional. So, so now we've got the AG's office investigating this. So it's moved up to state level looking into this case. They had it for 14 months, and any of the witnesses that were interviewed by the AG's office were told investigators in this case that they were totally unprofessional, and it was evident that they didn't know what they were doing. The surviving family members and other experts that presented their findings were never interviewed, and the spinal cord specimen was never examined by any of the AG's experts. The AG's office did not publish any of their findings until the office was contacted by the Philadelphia Inquirer Daily News journalist on March 16th, 2019. Not looking good for the AG or the DA's office or the Emmy. Finally, we get to the Declaration of Philip Hanton. This was signed June 28th, 2021. He says, before I learned Miss Greenberg was dead, Samuel Goldberg, her fiancé, had come to the concierge desk where I was stationed on the first floor of the apartment building. Mr. Goldberg asked if I could help him into his apartment 603, and I told him I could not. I could not accompany or escort Mr. Goldberg up the elevator stairs or otherwise at any time on January 26th, 2011. That's not what he's there for. Had he been accompanied or escorted, it would have been by me. I do not know how, I do not know how Sam Goldberg entered apartment 603 at the time on January 26, 2011, because I was not with him. What? So Sam Goldberg lied and said you were? Hmm, it's interesting. Yet again, no accountability in this case. This came out in 2021, and still nothing. They're still playing games. They're still messing around with the family. He says, I did not see Ms. Greenberg's body in apartment 603 at any time. If anyone says I was with or able to observe Mr. Goldberg on the sixth floor when or just prior to when he claimed to enter apartment 603 on January 26th, they would be wrong because I was not with him or otherwise in a position to observe him. And that is signed 2021. Interesting, isn't it? That he now is saying, I mean, this comes out, the doorman, 10 years later, by the way, that Sam's story doesn't quite add up. Well, we kind of already knew that, but when he told everybody, well, the doorman was with me, he told police, doorman was with me, and I had to break in, and the doorman saw me, so it's all good. You don't need to interview him or anything. Wow. Evidence and wound analysis. In the initial investigation, police said that there were no signs of a struggle. The door was locked, according to Sam, when Sam entered. This is their actual latch, and that is the damage that was done to the latch. But if it was broken into, wouldn't it be all the way off? If he broke in, wouldn't this piece come off completely from the wall in order to open the door? Well, maybe not. I guess maybe not. But I would think if you are opening a door with as much enough force to get through that, I would think that it would maybe come off the wall or be more damaged than that, anyways. So, okay, so no signs of struggle except, Sam breaking the door, not latch. There were no footprints in the snow outside of their 6 foot or sixth floor balcony, so no one came in that way. So it was ruled a self-unaliving very quickly. Property manager had unit cleaned prior to the thorough investigation that the police did not get done. So police okayed it too. They were like, yeah, go ahead, clean it. It's cool. The family has serious doubts about the ruling, as they should. The wounds are inconsistent with being self inflicted. They have hired independent experts. The fiance was questioned, but there were no charges. He was cooperative, but, you know, rumors still linger. But there was no full interview that's ever been disclosed of Sam. So if there was a police interview with Sam, we're not privy to it, and neither is the Greenberg family, which I think is a travesty. The stab wounds, 10 to the back, 10 to the front, neck, and head. Some of the wounds that were inflicted on her back, as you can see, would be very difficult for one to do, if not impossible. And many experts have said that just what I said, that it's nearly impossible for some of these to be self-inflicted. So we've got the ME who's like, yeah, it's just whatever. And then we've got all these other experts saying, no, it's not. And then look at the incision on the back. This is computer generated. This is, so no ick factor or whatever, but this is what it would where all of her stab wounds were. Oh my gosh, it is very windy. I think my garbage can just went flying. I might have to go get that. Hold on. Sorry about that. Yes, we definitely lost our garbage can. It just went plop. So I had to go pick them up and put them back. And I realized that my boyfriend left the garage door open and it's like late in the afternoon and I just realized it. So whoops. Okay, so back to it. Many of the knife wounds were probably impossible for her to do just by the angle of the knife and how she would have had to have pulled back enough to get in and things of that nature. So they were determined not to be self-inflicted by these new experts, the independent experts. The new there was no note, so usually, as Cyril Wecht had stated in his report, they usually leave a note. There was no note. She was doing things that day that didn't indicate that she was acting weird or, thinking about it. She was acting normal with her friends and acting normal at her work. Nothing out of the ordinary. She stopped and got gas. If you're gonna do that, you're not gonna care that your gas tank's low and then it's there's a storm coming and you want to make sure that you top off your gas tank. You don't care about that. So, but that is what she did. She, as we know, she stopped and got gas to top it off because winter storm was coming. Through the toxicology report, there was no findings of drugs, alcohol, anything impairing her judgment. 1 second. All right. I just adjusted my view so now I can look forward at you while I'm reading. All right. So, no note, no drugs or alcohol, nothing impairing her judgment at the time. So, it doesn't make sense as a rule, as a self-inflicted, you know what. All right. So, next, forensic and medical examiner's flaws. So the initial ME's ruling was a homicide. Dr. Marlon Osborne, the assistant ME, ruled it a homicide. A couple months later, in March, it changed after a secret meeting that took place with the Pennsylvania police or Philly, I don't know who police, the PPD, the PPD, and the ME and the DA. So for laymen, that would be the district attorney is the DA, the ME is the medical examiner, and what was the last one I said? I don't even remember. Um, yeah, so anyways, they're all acronyms and things. So no full autopsy was ever released, was ever given to the family. They're suing for reclassification, obviously, because they, along with anyone that has a brain, doesn't believe that Ellen Greenberg killed herself by stabbing herself 20 times. Rulings, changes, and cover up. So, rulings, changes. The ruling flip flop. February 2011, Osborne rules it a homicide. But in March 2011, it is changed to a self-unaliving after this secret meeting. Then, remember, um, Josh Shapiro, the DA, recuses himself and hands it off to the Attorney General, Pennsylvania, and they review it in 2019 and uphold the ruling or determinations, which is just a travesty that they didn't actually look at the facts. All they're doing is covering their own. And that's what exactly what the court system is just to help them cover their own. Family law, I'm so skeptical and cynic now about anything that it comes to law enforcement and our justice system. Anyways, I shouldn't be, but I am. Family lawsuits and pushback. The Greenberg family. So, as I've been showing you pictures all throughout with her and her family, her mom and her dad there. They have filed multiple lawsuits for they've filed many requests for records, FOIA requests, things of that nature, and public stuff that the public should have. It's our information, and it's being held from the victims' families. So, what does that say? Who's on whose side? I don't know. So yeah, 2021, they actually do win access to some of the files, and those files, surprise, surprise, reveal consistent inconsistencies within the investigation and whatnot. And yeah, we already pretty much knew that. So this whole thing is ongoing. In 2023, they actually did appeal to change the homicide ruling to undetermined, and I believe that's still in litigation. It's going to take a while for all of this stuff because they make it a fight. They don't want to give us lay folk any kind of an inch in the justice system. They want to put us away, it seems. Um, Sam's family connections. Well, we cannot do this episode without talking about Sam's family, can we? We can't because of his uncle, who is a witness in this case and possibly a criminal in this case. So, the uncle's ties to Josh Shapiro, part one. Josh Shapiro is now the governor. He was at the time. I'm sorry, the DA, right? The DA, not the AG. I put the wrong thing there. At the time, he was the DA. Or no, he was the AG. Yeah. Okay, never mind. I lied. He's the AG. Wow, I'm so confused. See what I mean? Like this case has wild rabbit holes and people you have to look into and stuff. Well, anyways, let's get back to it. Sam Goldberg's uncle is James Schwartzman, who is down here. I think I spelled his name wrong. Whoops. He is a prominent Philadelphia attorney with political influence. He has ties to Josh Shapiro. James actually donated to Shapiro's campaigns for his AG 2016 campaign and his governor 2022 campaign. So, what do you think of that? We've got some friendship, under the table friendships happening here. So obviously, this could be a potential bias. Shapiro, as AG from 2017 through 2023, he oversaw reviews. He ruled changes. His ruling changed to what? The ruling that changed to self-unaliving amid family pressure. Oh, it was under his watch that that ruling change happened, is what they're saying. Despite the family wanting the determination changed. Cover up implication. Obviously, connections may have influenced the medical examiner's reversal. We know because they already said the police told us to. What were we going to do? What were we going to do? Actually tell the truth? The police told us to. Why would we tell the truth when the police told us we could do this? Anyways, part two. James Schwartzman is a longtime donor to the PA Democrats, including Shapiro's funds. So it's not just James, I'm sorry, it's not just Josh Shapiro, but it is other politicians. So there's that. Shapiro's role was he refused to reclassify the death. So he is the one that upheld the self-unaliving ruling despite the family appeals. So kept, he's the one that denied it, basically. And he's got the family connections. Implication, familial and political ties suggest, whoops, why do I keep doing that? Suggest that there might be favoritism there. Obviously, justice is delayed because nobody is being held accountable, and it is suppressed investigation. They don't want us to know the truth. The mother's ties. Let's talk about Sam Goldberg's mom. So and we haven't mentioned her yet at all, but she comes in because it is very important. Sam's mother is Melissa Goldberg, and she's connected to the Hankin family through marriage and social circles. So she is part of the Hankin group. The Hankin family is a wealthy Pennsylvania real estate development company. They have multiple companies, so like Hankin Group, Hankin Apartments, they have like different branches of everything. They have billions in assets. The family itself is worth over 100 million, probably closer to $1 billion. And it is one of those families where it's just generational wealth, it's been in the family for forever and they're just wealthy people. So that's the kind of people we're dealing with here. The Hankin Group, obviously a very big part of Pennsylvania and making business happen there because of the real estate. So they are looked at by politicians as something that would be valuable to them. So they make connections. They have political influence. You can start, as a company, you can donate to these politicians, including Democrats like Shapiro. And they do, they do, and they will try to influence political officials. It's known. All right, so the cover-up implication is that there's wealth connections that may have shielded Sam. So obviously, these people are in powerful positions. It could have shielded Sam from scrutiny. Real estate is a perfect cover for illegal crimes and things like money laundering, things like insurance fraud and whatnot. Things of that nature you can do easily under the guise of, well, we're just a real estate company. But yeah, okay, they're just a plain old real estate company. They also have banks, which is another way that you can um, traffic or if you own the bank system and you own the real estate companies, if you're laundering money in your real estate companies, you can easily bypass getting caught if you also own the banks that deal with the real estate companies. See how that works? I'm not saying that this particular company or these people in particular are doing these things, but I'm just saying this is how the world works. And we'd be naive to not think so or to not question it. So there's that. So the Hankin Group is known for philanthropy. They have ties to the Philly elite and wealthy investors. Like they're on boards with all these people. They have fundraisers and just rub elbows with all of these wealthy investors and wealthy people in their real estate company. They're influential, the Hankin Group, to say it in other terms. They are influential and they surround themselves with influential people. They have leverage as a family. They have potential influence on law enforcement and medical examiner through donations and networks because obviously it's all if you donate to but the politics, the government, you're going to see that those donations work on or work for the medical examiner too. They go towards, I should say, because the medical examiner is usually employed through the state. So they get that money too. So it's bias, it's influence, it's a concern. So a quick ruling for self-unaliving avoided a deep probe into the fiance and it protected powerful interests, in my opinion. Theories and commentary, cover up and foul play. So the police and the medical examiner, obviously, this says overreach. I think they were corrupt, but I'll go in the middle and say misconduct, okay? So there was definitely some misconduct going on in this case by police and the medical examiner. The quick ruling for self-unaliving was just really to close the case, right? To not get anybody asking questions, especially if you want to cover it up, you want it closed fast. Fiance's suspicion. The locked door. I showed you the damage to that door. Do you think he broke in through that lock? Let me know in the comments. I don't. Excuse me. Especially, I cannot stop. I have a frog in my throat today, apparently. So locked door, no doorman with him, but we're supposed to believe that the door was locked. He had the gym alibi, but her texts stopped at what, 2:45, 2:47? And so that gave him plenty of time from then until, let's go back to that slide just to be precise. I know it's really early on, but hold on. Let me find it. Here it is. Sorry, it's 3:47 was her last text. So at 3:47 is her last text. Sam leaves the apartment at 4:45. So that's about an hour there in between where we know she was alive and then the last person to have seen her is caught on camera leaving the apartment. So, what is it? I don't know. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense what the state is telling us. All right. So next, his motive. What would his motive be? Well, like I said, that incised injury to the back, the large in uh, whatever you call it, it's a gaping wound to the back of her head. I wonder if they were arguing and maybe he just lashed out and hit her in the back of the head with something very heavy, and maybe it didn't kill her right away. So he was like, "Oh shit, what did I do? I gotta kill her now because I don't know." That's a theory. That's just my theory, speculating. Or there was, so that was another point that I did not bring up. Near the sink, next to the sink, there was a bowl of blueberries and a cut up orange. So it looked like she was making some kind of fruit or fruit salad or something for herself. And that might have been why she was there by the knives. Maybe they were arguing. Maybe he, out of the blue, just started stabbing her out of anger. I don't know. But maybe she said she was going to leave him. Maybe he got so upset that he lashed out on her. It's usually what it takes for them to get really violent. If they can't have you, then no one will, type of mentality. Um, and then they take out their fiance or whomever. So that's what I think the motive might have been. I think either she said she was leaving him or they were just in a really bad fight and maybe he injured her and realized, oh crap, that's an injury that you can't come back from. But she was still alive when he was stabbing her because And because it was in the back, it almost makes me think that he came up to her back, and started stabbing her in the back, and then the front, because the knife was found in the front. It's all just very weird. And there were also what they say the state says were shallow wounds, which they say were like hesitation wounds, where she was going to stab herself, but she didn't. It's like, yeah, but she has all these other wounds. So I don't think that's what it was, but okay. So, anyways, that's motive, maybe. I don't know. Arguing the older bruises. I really do think that he was abusive. All signs point to this guy was an abusive asshole. And he very likely killed her. Allegedly. Broader implication is that there's clear evidence of misconduct, not just in the DA's office, but now the governor, or sorry, the AG, not just the AG. So it was the DA's office is corrupt or misconduct. They're trying to also cover it up. And then, so that's your county. And then your state is the AG, which Josh Shapiro was at the time. He helped cover it up previously, and now he's the governor. That corrupt, that same corrupt AG is now governor, doing more corrupt things as governor, I'm sure, in my opinion, allegedly. And that is the end. Sorry, that was the end of our presentation. I wasn't sure if we had a little bit more. But yeah, so obviously this has been going on for a while in the state of Pennsylvania, in Massachusetts, in any state near you, state you're in, most likely, is doing things like this, potentially. Because now we're seeing it on a daily basis coming out with all these other cases where there's corruption, there's cover ups. It's all because someone knows somebody and they're all doing each other a favor, which is disgusting in my opinion. And I hate it. I hate it. I really do. I think that there needs to be more transparency in our justice system, and we need to do things differently. There needs to be reform because the way things are done now, it is to punish us, to punish us for any reason they want, it seems, and let the rich and the elite and everybody else get away with it. Whatever you want to do, get away with it because we got ties to somebody in government, somebody in power. Well, what about the rest of us who don't? And the government is down our necks trying to get us for a crime that we didn't commit. So things are a little backwards, I'd say, in the way that our justice system is, at least right now. Hopefully, we get reform one day. Let me know in the comments below what kind of reform you would like to see in cases such as this and others that we talk about on my channel. Leave comments below about what you think and your theories on this case too. I love to read them and often I do write back. So thank you guys so much for watching and take care. I'll see you at a later time. Bye guys. That's all for now of the Corruption Files. Thanks for digging deep with me. Like, subscribe, and comment your theories below. See you next time.